Checked my watch. 6:58. I knocked. The porch light at my son's house in Brookfield, Connecticut was the kind of warm yellow that should make a man feel welcome, but I'd been standing on that doormat for almost a full minute before anyone bothered to come to the door. I'd driven up from New Haven that afternoon, 47 miles, with a pumpkin pie my wife used to make every Christmas Eve until the cancer took her 3 years back. I'd baked it myself this time. The crust came out lopsided, but it tasted right. That's what mattered. The door opened, and there she was. My daughter-in-law, Bethany. She had a glass of red wine in one hand and that thin smile she always wore around me like I was a delivery man who'd come to the wrong address. "Oh," she said, "you're here." I held up the pie. "Christmas Eve. You said 7. Right. Yeah." She didn't move out of the doorway. Behind her I could hear voices, laughter, the clink of crystal. I recognized a man's voice booming about somebody's golf handicap. "Listen, Frank, we have some pretty important guests tonight. The Crandalls, from the firm, and Brennan's parents flew in from Charleston." I waited. "It's just," she said, and she looked at the sweater I was wearing, the brown cardigan my wife knitted me in 2009, the one I always wore on holidays because it felt like having her arm around my shoulders. "We're trying to make a real impression. The Crandalls are bringing their daughter, and you know how Marcus has been gunning for that partner spot. Bethany, can I come in? It's 22 degrees out here." She stepped back finally, like she was doing me a favor. I walked into the foyer of my son's house, the house I'd helped him buy with a down payment from the sale of my brother's auto body shop in 2018. There were strangers in the living room. A tall man in a navy blazer. A woman wearing more diamonds than the windows of a jewelry store. A young couple I'd never seen before. My son Marcus came around the corner from the kitchen carrying a bottle of bourbon. He looked at me. Then he looked at Bethany. Something passed between them, some silent agreement I wasn't a part of. "Dad? Hey, you made it." "I made it." He didn't hug me. He hadn't hugged me since his mother's funeral. "Listen," he said, "I know we said 7, but the Crandalls came early, so things kind of started without us." "That's all right," Bethany cut in. "Frank, I set up a place for you in the den. You can watch whatever you want on the TV in there, and I'll bring you a plate." I felt my mouth go dry. In the den. You want me to eat in the den? She gave me that thin smile again. "It's just the dining table's set for 8, and we already squeezed in Brennan's parents, and the Crandall's daughter is finishing up her residency at Yale New Haven. So Marcus really wanted her and Marcus to talk, and my table seats 12, I said. I bought it for them." She blinked. Marcus stared at the floor. "Frank," Bethany said, "this is our home, and tonight is really important to us, so if you could just be a team player about this, I'd really appreciate it. Marcus, take your father's coat." Marcus reached for it. I let him. Then I walked into the den. There was a folding TV tray set up in front of an armchair, a paper plate, a plastic fork, a cloth napkin at least, but you could tell she'd grabbed it from the laundry pile because it had a coffee stain on one corner. I stood there looking at that tray for a long time. In the dining room, somebody laughed. I heard a woman's voice say something about Aspen and somebody else say something about a yacht. I sat down. The chair creaked. I put my hands on my knees. About 8 minutes later, Bethany came in carrying a plate. Turkey breast, no skin. A scoop of mashed potatoes, some green beans that looked like they'd been on a serving spoon for a while, no gravy, no cranberry, no stuffing, She set it down on the tray and stood there for a second, looking at me like she was waiting for a thank you. I didn't give her one. "Whose house is this, Bethany?" She frowned. "What? I asked you. Whose house is this?" "Ours. Mine and Marcus's." "Is it? What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." She rolled her eyes and walked out. I heard her in the hallway, muttering to my son, "Your father's being weird." And then Marcus's voice, "Just let him be. He'll calm down." I sat in that den for 41 minutes. I didn't touch the plate. I listened to the laughter. I listened to a man named Crandall talk about his cabin in Vermont. And I listened to my son's voice, performing for these strangers, putting on the accent he'd developed at the law school I'd paid for. The accent that wasn't the accent of the boy I raised in West Haven. At 7:45 I got up. I walked through the dining room. 8 people at a long oak table I had not bought. New table. Expensive. Nobody looked at me except Bethany, who gave me a tight little wave like "Bye now." I went out the front door without my coat. I walked to my truck. I sat behind the wheel and I cried for about 90 seconds, and then I stopped and I drove home. That was Christmas Eve. Now I want to tell you about Christmas morning. My name is Franklin Thomas Pierce. I'm 67 years old. I was born in Bridgeport. I worked 38 years for the regional office of an industrial real estate firm called Heartline Properties, and the last 14 of those years I spent as the senior acquisitions partner. I retired in 2021 with a pension, a profit-sharing buyout, and a portfolio of personal real estate holdings that I'd built up quietly, the way my father had taught me. You don't tell people what you have, son. You let them tell you. My wife Eleanor and I lived in a colonial in New Haven. We had one son, Marcus. We sent him to Choate, then Trinity, then Boston College Law. We sent him because we loved him. Marcus married Bethany Whitcomb Lasher in 2014. She'd grown up in Greenwich. Her father had been a regional VP at one of the smaller hedge funds in Stamford. She'd gone to Vassar and then to Columbia for her MBA, and somewhere between Vassar and Columbia she'd developed a way of looking at people who didn't summer in the right places. When Marcus and Bethany got married, Eleanor and I gave them a check for $50,000. That was their down payment on the house in Brookfield. The house Bethany had just sat me in the den of. Now here's the part nobody at that dinner table knew. That house, the 4-bedroom colonial on Pinecrest Lane, the one with the slate patio Bethany loved to post pictures of on Facebook, was not in their name, not in the deed sense. When Marcus and Bethany picked the property in 2014, they were both in their early years, still building. They didn't qualify for the mortgage on their own. So I'd done what fathers do. I put the property under one of my LLCs, financed it with my own credit, and we'd structured the arrangement as a long-term lease to own. Every month, Marcus paid rent into an account that built equity. The plan was always that, by 2030, the house would transfer to him outright. But the deed to this day was held by Pinecrest Holdings, LLC. And Pinecrest Holdings, LLC was wholly owned by Franklin T. Pierce. Marcus knew this. Bethany did not. Or if she did, she'd forgotten. People forget the facts that don't flatter them. I didn't sleep that Christmas Eve. I drove home, hung up my coat, walked into my office, and sat down at my desk. I poured myself 2 fingers of the rye my wife used to keep on the bookshelf for company. I opened the bottom drawer. I pulled out the file. The file was 3 inches thick. I'd been keeping it for almost 2 years. It started in March 2024, when my accountant Ron called me about an unusual draw on one of my secondary accounts. I keep what's called a household reserve. It's a checking account I funded years ago for emergencies with a debit card that Marcus had access to in case he ever needed to cover something for me when I was traveling. He'd used it twice, both times for legitimate things. Once when my furnace went out in 2019 and I was in Phoenix, once when my dog had to go to the emergency vet. But starting in late 2023, that card started getting used regularly. Small things at first. A charge at a wine store, a charge at a salon in Ridgefield, a charge at a boutique on Greenwich Avenue. It wasn't Marcus. The card, I confirmed by checking with Ron and pulling the records myself, was being used by Bethany. She'd somehow gotten the number. Maybe she found it in Marcus's wallet. Maybe Marcus gave it to her thinking it was his and then realized after the fact and was too embarrassed to say. I don't know, but the charges added up. By December 2024, she had spent $41,000 on that card. I didn't say anything. I told Ron to keep tracking it, but to leave the account active. I wanted to see how far she'd go. She kept going. By March 2025, $58,000. By August, $72,000. By the time I sat down at my desk on the night of December 24, 2025, with a glass of rye in my hand, Bethany Whitcomb Pierce had spent $93,400 of my money on handbags, spa weekends, a leased BMW convertible she kept at her sister's house in Darien. And this was the one that made my hand shake. A private investigator she'd retained in October to dig up information on the Crandall family before that Christmas Eve dinner. Because she was working an angle. She wanted Marcus to be partner. And she was using my money to grease the wheels. But it got worse. In June 2025, my brother Henry passed away. He was 63. He'd had a stroke in his apartment in Hamden and didn't survive the night. He'd never married. He left his entire estate to me, the auto body shop building, a small life insurance policy, and a coin collection my father had left him in 1997. The coins included a 1907 high-relief San Gordon's double eagle that my dad had inherited from his uncle, who'd worked at the Philadelphia Mint. I'd brought a few items, including the coin album, to Marcus's house in late June, telling him I wanted him to hold on to them in trust for any future grandchildren. I wanted them to stay in the family. He'd put them in a small safe in his home office. In November, when I went to retrieve a different document from that safe, the coin album was gone. I didn't ask Marcus. I asked the appraiser at Stack's Bowers in New York. They'd received a consignment in late October from a seller named Bethany Pierce. The St. Gordons had sold for $96,000 at private auction. She had stolen from me. She had taken something my father had given my brother and my brother had given me, and she had sold it to buy whatever it is women like her think they need to be people. And on top of that, she had sat me at a folding TV tray on Christmas Eve and told me my brown cardigan didn't match her centerpiece. I poured a second rye. I picked up the phone and called my attorney at home. His name is Walter Isaacson. He's been my lawyer for 23 years. He picked up on the third ring. Frank, Merry Christmas Eve. Walt, I need you in my office at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. I know what tomorrow is. He paused. Then he said, I'll bring coffee. I hung up. Christmas morning, 6:45. I was at my desk. The file was open. I'd added a single sheet on top, in my own handwriting, listing what I wanted. Full eviction notice for Pinecrest Lane, 60 days. Demand letter for repayment of the household reserve account, $93,400 plus interest. Civil suit for the theft of the St. Gordons, with criminal referral to the Connecticut State's Attorney's Office in Litchfield County. Restraining order against Bethany Whitcomb Pierce, limiting her access to any of my real estate holdings, including the Colonial in New Haven, and a separate document, a trust amendment. I was removing Bethany as a contingent beneficiary of any inheritance flowing through Marcus by way of the spousal exclusion clause we drafted years ago and never had cause to use. If she divorced Marcus, she got nothing from my estate. If Marcus divorced her, the same. Eleanor and I had built that clause in for exactly this reason. Just in case, Eleanor had said. I trust her, I'd said. Eleanor, God rest her, had only smiled. Walter showed up at 7 sharp. He read the sheet. He looked up at me. Frank, you sure? I'm sure. This is going to detonate, you understand. Marcus is going to be in the blast radius. I know. And the coin. The coin is a felony. Once we file that referral, we can't unfile it. I know. He nodded. He took the file. By 10 a.m., he was back in his office in Hartford drafting. By noon, the eviction notice was being prepared for service through a process server in Brookfield. By 3 p.m., the demand letter had been sent by certified mail, return receipt, to the Pinecrest address. The criminal referral was queued for the morning of December 26. I went to church alone that Christmas afternoon, the 4 o'clock service at Christ Episcopal in New Haven, where Eleanor and I had been married in 1980. I sat in the second-to-last pew. I sang the carols. I prayed for my son. I prayed for my daughter-in-law, whom I hated, because hating someone is its own kind of poison and I am too old to drink it. I went home. I made myself a turkey sandwich on rye with mustard, the way Eleanor used to make for me. I ate it standing at the kitchen counter. I went to bed at 9. December 26 was a Friday. The process server arrived at the house on Pinecrest Lane at 8:15 in the morning. Bethany answered the door. She was in her bathrobe holding a coffee. The server handed her 3 envelopes, eviction notice, demand letter, civil complaint, and asked her to sign for them. She did without reading what she was signing. People who've never been in trouble before always do. I know this because the server called me at 8:31 with the confirmation. Marcus called me at 8:47. Dad, what is this? What is what? There's a stack of legal. Bethany's having a meltdown in the kitchen. There's an eviction notice. From you. From your LLC. Yes. Dad, what's going on? Did you read the demand letter? I'm reading it now. Read it. I waited. I could hear his breathing change. I could hear the moment he understood what $93,400 meant. I could hear the moment he understood, a few seconds later, that the words St. Gaudens Double Eagle in paragraph 4 meant his wife had stolen from his father and was now going to be charged with a Class B felony in Connecticut. He didn't say anything for almost a minute. Dad, yes, didn't she? Didn't she really? Marcus, I have the consignment paperwork from Stack's Bowers. I have the bank records from the household reserve. I have a private investigator's invoice that she paid for, with my money, addressed to her at your home. I have everything. He started to cry. My son, 41 years old, a corporate attorney at one of the biggest firms in Connecticut, and he started to cry on the phone like he was 8 years old and had broken a window. Dad, I didn't. I know you didn't. I didn't know about the coin. I swear to God, I didn't know about the coin. I believe you. And the card. Dad, the card I gave her, I thought it was mine. I gave her the number once when we needed to. Marcus. Yeah, I'm not mad at you. I'm done with her. There's a difference. He cried for a while. I let him. When he stopped, I told him to come to my house at noon, alone, no Bethany, and I'd make him lunch, and we would talk like men. He came at 11:45. He'd been crying the whole drive. I could see it. I made him a grilled cheese the way Eleanor used to make them, with a slice of tomato inside. We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't eat much. "Dad, I want you to know. The way she's been about you, the way she sat you in the den last night. I should have stopped her. I knew it was wrong while it was happening. I knew it, and I didn't. You didn't. I'm sorry. I know. Are you going to drop the case? Which one? The criminal one. The coin." I looked at him. My boy. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike on the street in West Haven. The boy who'd asked me when he was 7 why his grandfather kept his coins in a special book, and I'd told him because some things matter not for what they're worth, but for who carried them before. No. He nodded. He didn't argue. "What about the house?" "The house is mine, Marcus. It always was. The eviction is for both of you, 60 days, but I'll tell you what I'll do. If you file for divorce inside 30 days, I'll take you off the eviction. You can stay. The lease-to-own resumes. By 2030, the house is yours like we planned. Dad, that's the offer. Take it or don't." He looked at his grilled cheese. He looked up at me. There was something in his face I hadn't seen since Eleanor's funeral. A kind of waking up. "I'll take it." I drove him home at 3. I didn't go inside. He hugged me in the driveway. First time in 3 years. The criminal complaint was processed on December 29. Bethany was arrested on January 7 at her sister's house in Darien, where she'd retreated after Marcus served her with divorce papers on January 3. She was charged with first-degree larceny. The St. Gardens alone qualified before they even added the household reserve fraud. Bail was set at $50,000. Her father in Greenwich posted it. She didn't speak to Marcus or to me for the next 9 months. The case went to plea in October 2026. She took 18 months in the Women's Correctional Facility in Niantic, with a possibility of parole at 12. She was also ordered to pay full restitution, $93,400 for the household reserve account, $96,000 for the coin, plus court costs and the legal fees on my side. Her father covered most of it within the first 60 days. The check for the coin came in April. I framed the receipt. It hangs in my office now, next to the photograph of my dad in his Navy uniform. Marcus's divorce was finalized on May 14, 2026. He kept the house. He moved his office to the spare bedroom upstairs. He started coming over for Sunday dinners again. He brings a bottle of wine. We watch the Yankees on the TV in the den, the same den I'd been seated in like a guest in my own family. And we talk. Slowly at first, the way you talk to somebody you used to know and are getting to know again. He hasn't dated anyone since. He says he's not ready. I don't push. The Crandalls, by the way, didn't make Marcus partner. The way Walter described it to me later, the firm got wind of the criminal proceedings against his wife in late January, and the partnership track quietly stalled out. Marcus left that firm in August and joined a smaller practice in Danbury that does estate work. He likes it more. He says the people are kinder. He looks 5 years younger than he did at that Christmas Eve dinner. I want to say one more thing because of something my brother Henry said to me once before he died. We were sitting on his porch in Hamden, drinking beer. He'd never had children. He said, "Frank, the hardest thing in the world isn't loving your kid. It's loving your kid when your kid is wrong." I didn't understand him at the time. I understand him now. I could have pressed for jail time on my son. He'd known about the household reserve charges. I'm pretty sure of that, even if he didn't know about the coin. I could have ruined him. I had the paperwork. I didn't do it. Not because I'm soft. I've never been soft a day in my life. I didn't do it because I'm his father, and there's a line between justice and cruelty, and the line is whether the person on the other end of it has the capacity to become better, and if they do, your job is to give them the room to do it. Bethany did not have that capacity. I knew it the second she set that paper plate down on the TV tray and walked out of the den without looking at me. Marcus did. I knew it the second he started to cry on the phone. The hard part of being a father, as my brother said, is knowing the difference. I'll tell you the last detail and then I'll stop. This past Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2026, almost exactly 1 year after Bethany sat me in the den, my son came to my house in New Haven. He brought a pumpkin pie. The crust was lopsided. He told me he'd tried to make it the way Mum used to. I set the table for two. I lit a candle. We ate at the long table, the one Eleanor and I had bought in 1986 for our first house in Hamden, the one that has carried 4 decades of family meals across 3 different houses and now sits in my dining room in New Haven. After dinner, I gave him the coin album. "It's yours now," I told him. "All of it. The St. Gordon's is back in there where it belongs." He held the album in his lap and didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I'm going to be a better man." "I know," I said. "You already are." That was the lesson. That's all of it. A man's worth isn't in what he holds on to. It's in what he's willing to lose to keep the things that matter, and what he's willing to forgive when the people he loves come back from a place they should never have gone. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I don't know who you are or what brought you to this story, but I hope if there's somebody in your life sitting at a folding TV tray when they should be at the head of the table, you have the courage to pick up the tray and walk out. You don't owe anyone your seat at your own table. That's what I learned. That's what I wanted to tell you. Good night. I've thought a lot about that Christmas Eve in the year since it happened, and I want to tell you what I've come to understand. Not as a lecture. Just as one man's plain accounting. Every choice a person makes plants something. Bethany planted contempt the first time she rolled her eyes at me at a holiday dinner in 2017, and nobody, including me, said a word about it. She planted a little more when she started using my card for her hair appointments. She planted more when she sold my brother's coin. By the time she set that paper plate down on the TV tray, the seeds had grown into the kind of person who genuinely believed she was entitled to humiliate the man who had paid for her roof. The roof she didn't even know I owned. That's not karma in any spiritual sense. That's just arithmetic. You add small dishonesties together long enough, you become a dishonest person. My son Marcus planted something different. He planted weakness. Not cruelty, weakness. Every time he watched her treat me a certain way and stayed quiet, he became a man. A little less able to speak up the next time. Cowardice compounds the same way courage does. The reason he was crying on the phone the morning after that dinner wasn't because of the legal papers. It was because he had finally seen the man he'd been letting himself become. I want to say something to you about the 3 things I've tried to live by, because they're what carried me through that night and the months after. Character, judgment, and grit. Character is what you do when nobody's checking. Judgment is knowing the difference between mercy and surrender. They look alike from the outside, and they are not the same thing. Grit is the willingness to do the hard, slow, unglamorous thing for as long as it takes. I had to use all three: character, to keep my hands clean and let the law do the work instead of swinging at my son's wife the way part of me wanted to; judgment, to know that pressing charges on Bethany was justice and pressing charges on Marcus would have been revenge, and a wise man can tell those apart; grit, to sit at that desk on Christmas morning and start the paperwork instead of letting it slide into the fog of holiday forgiveness, the way I'd let so many smaller things slide before. If you're sitting somewhere right now feeling small in your own family, hear me. Your worth is not negotiable, and the people who treat you like it is are telling you exactly who they are. Believe them the first time. You don't have to be cruel back. You just have to stop applauding your own diminishment. Walk to your truck, drive home, open the drawer, do the work. That's all I have. That's the whole sermon.